Hello, my name is Kadisha Thomas Smith. I'm the CEO of Care Content. I'm here with my colleague, Rebecca Stewart, VP of Client Strategy for Care Content. And we are a digital agency based in Chicago. We help healthcare organizations really use their web presence to engage the audiences that will help them grow and reach their strategic goals. The purpose of our presentation is to really address some of the struggles we're seeing with healthcare organizations around producing content that helps educate their audiences about coronavirus and COVID-19 and the pandemic. We're seeing hospitals be able to really get ahead of it, and we're seeing some hospitals and healthcare organizations who are struggling with it. And for those who are struggling, we know why, and we want to help unpack what hospitals and healthcare organizations can do to make sure that they are producing content and distributing content that's helpful and matching their strategic goals still, and also just sort of calming some of the anxiety, really helping people complete tasks and just being useful to their audiences. So that's the purpose of our presentation today. It's helping you get ahead of your COVID-19 content. All right, so don't panic. Get ahead of your COVID-19 messaging with a governance. This is the key missing ingredient that we know hospitals don't have if they are struggling with content around COVID-19. Governance is probably the missing ingredient. It's urgent messaging. It's stressful, and there's ways to curb this stress by being prepared and organized. This is even more important because many of us are working from home. We have these kids in the background who can't go to school. So planning is even more important now than it has ever been before if you want to stay ahead of other organizations in your area, some of your competitors, and some of the other people who are also giving information that may or may not be accurate. If you want to stay ahead of that, it's really, really important to plan. Okay, so before we begin, let's look at how one of our clients responded to COVID-19 messaging needs. And this is a client that we've worked with for years, and they had, as soon as the tide turned to escalate the concern about COVID-19, this is how they responded. First, they put a bar at the top. This red bar at the top that doesn't disrupt the structure of the site, but it's very clear. And for anybody who's coming to this organization's website for information, you can't help but find it. This is a great approach just because not only is it high and very prominent, but this is on every single page of the website. So if somebody stumbles on the site from search and they get to an interior page, there's still going to be this red update bar at the top to easily find information about COVID-19. The other element that they immediately implemented was their homepage, their hero image. They had a beautiful video that, opens people up to their space and what it's like to receive services there, but we were able to immediately replace that with the standard stock photo that has become kind of an icon of this virus, and people know immediately where to go to get important updates. If you click that link, it takes you to a page about things that people are asking about. Parking, how do I make my appointment now? Is this building open or not? So those very quick sort of, I need this answer right now question that you can get to in one click from the homepage. They also produced videos on the fly to help their audience deal with the situation, to help their audience answer questions. This particular healthcare organization has an in-house videography team that's able to meet up with subject matter experts and say, hey, let's produce a quick video. And they were able to turn this around very quickly from an expert in their organization. And then they also have something more about just sort of the life of this. How do you talk to your children about it? Very appropriate for a children's hospital. That's probably a question that a lot of parents had, and they were able to provide an answer very quickly. And then also they produced this content and distributed it very well. I think oftentimes we forget that it's more than just, oh, I'm going to post this on Facebook and be done with it. Yep.
Right.
It's more than just I'm going to post this on Facebook and be done with it, but it's about looking at all the different distribution vehicles where you can promote this content. So they changed the profile URL to be a YouTube link to the video. They put the video in their Instagram feed. They've been sharing it on Facebook, of course. They've shared it throughout their site. Next slide.
They're also showing they're using social media also to talk about their operational changes.
Yes.
And so they had a change in where people could park. So they immediately put an image on here and they had information. And they had this on Facebook too. We're since this is a short video, we didn't do everything, but and then you'll see here, even on the right, we didn't call it out in here, but you can see they have a picture of how no one's here. So don't worry about coming.
Right. And then, of course, adding this to their YouTube channel, and the content that they're producing is being posted on YouTube, which is obviously the second most popular search engine. I'm sure that people who are looking for information about this hospital and their response would go to YouTube just as much as they would go to the Google search bar. So they wanted to make sure they had something there as well. Okay, so what we've said is that governance is the missing ingredient. If you're not able to pull together content quickly and respond quickly, it's probably a missing governance plan or something in your process that is not allowing you to keep up with content needs. Mm-hmm. So this is about how you can create your own governance plan to keep up with these content needs, especially as the situation continues to change.
Right, so that's where I'll come in and talk to you. But before we get into that, just notice that Khadisha and I are at our homes. We are physically distancing. We're not social distancing because we're talking to each other. We're trying to use that word physical instead of social. But, you know, this is what we're going to be talking about is a perfect example of the process that you need to have in place. So when we're not together, how do we communicate to each other? So let's get started here. These are 3 simple steps. And keep in mind what we're sharing is the best case scenario and many opportunities. What we're saying may not be specifically working for you for other details, but we're going to give you a worksheet that you can fill out for your own needs. So step 1 is develop a strategic and tactical team that works together. This is so important because you have, so again, thinking about this from a crisis communication, this is COVID-19, you have the leadership, you have the medical director, you have infection prevention, you have the marketing team, you have chief marketing officer, you have the PR people. So you have all these people, and as a content developer or content manager, content director, how are you going to keep them all, how are you going to keep that in line? And you have that process. You have the people, the roles and responsibilities that you know who's doing what. And it's, like I said, what I'm going to show you is a sample of what these teams look like. So the first slide here is the strategic team. So this is the team that's going to determine that messaging that so we also think about the internal audience and external audience, because I'm sure healthcare frontline people, we know that they're being taxed. What are we going to say to them? How are we going to say it? What is the voice of the hospital? What's the tone going to be for each of the different audiences? So what we have here is a matrix, basically, is what's the role, what's the responsibility, and who's the person. Now, if we were to do a full-blown governance, these would be a little bit more detailed. But the purpose of this is what we're trying to do is, if you don't have this now, how can you, starting tomorrow, starting today, over the weekend, how can you start planning this so that when you get to work on Monday, or if you're working over the weekend, to say, hey, let's pause just for a second, let's get this in place. So let's get to this. So in the role, we have, and Khadisha's going to chime in too, we both have experience from working with hospitals. We've done this before, and we've seen what works, what doesn't. So this is going to be very conversational. We'll be going back and forth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I have here is a messaging lead. So this is very vague. Typically, it would be maybe a sponsor or an actual title of someone. But we put this here because at this point of view, based on your hospital, this could be infection prevention person, it could be the chief marketing officer, it could be PR person, communications person, CEO, CMO, but basically what this is saying, this person is leading the overall message needs for the entire content ecosystem. So we're not just thinking about website, we're thinking what's going to go on Instagram, what's going to go on Facebook, Twitter, your intranet. And so that person is basically leading that strategic and tactical team from a higher level. And then you have a content lead. This is the person who, if you're a content director, if you're the content editor, if you're the content manager, whatever your title would be, basically the person who, this is your hat where you're saying, all right, this is the direction we're getting from the strategic team. I need to schedule all strategical and tactical communications meetings. So when's the strategy team meeting? When's the tactical team meeting? When are we going to communicate? This is the person who's creating that editorial calendar. So you have this direction of, okay, here's a type of information that we know we want to share every day. We may not know the exact message, but let's say every morning at 8 a.m. we're going to have an update. So here's the editorial calendar. You're putting that together. And they're assigning the content production needs. So you'll see that's assigning to the tactical team. And then reporting back to the strategic team saying, okay, strategy team, this is what the direction you gave us. This is what we've done. This is the results that we've been given.
Can I chime in here?
Yeah,
so the other thing I want to say about the content lead is think of this person as honestly being the person conducting the orchestra. They are the ones who are sort of bringing together all of these different voices and all of these different levels of input and making sure that it's streamlined into a calendar or some kind of production cadence that makes sense for the organization. This person is extremely important. This person should drink a lot of coffee right now. And this person is really just kind of the point person for making sure that your content production throughout your ecosystem is very streamlined. The worst case scenario of not having this person in place is you will have people going rogue. People will start to create their own vehicles for informing their audiences about what's going on. And that may or may not be consistent with the messaging that your organization wants to put out. So it's very important to have this content leader touching base with all of the different departments, all of the different areas where you might be able to collaborate to create content and letting them know I'm here. I should be the filter for anything that you need to go out online.
Right. We've all had those doctors who've gone rogue. We all have. That's another therapy video we'll do someday, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then what I have here is I call them voices just for this is not the normal term I would use for a governance plan. It would be more of a lead, but you have the medical voice where this is chief medical officer who said, okay, here's our official message for the medical staff. Here's the people that I approve for you to interview. So what you're doing, I like the word voice in this point of view because we're letting them say, this is who you need to talk to. I have a say because this is my personal vested interest in this. I need to be a part of this team. And so, and then the legal voice, Kadisha and I talked about this. We were like, oh no, the legal. We know how that works, where it's like, oh, the legal team are they going to put a crux in everything? This is very, very important for this point of view is what I've had in that guidance for what can we say, what can't we say, how are we saying that, just have that run through because so many things are changing right now. We need to be covered. And so that's the purpose of that. The marketing voice, communications voice, so this is, again, you may have a marketing person, manager, who is the marketing and PR manager, who does communications too. So, but just know, I used to work at an academic medical center and we had a marketing person, a communications person, and a PR person, and then we had an internet strategies person. So it's a lot of people in that. It was a big hospital, but if you have a smaller hospital, that's all combined, and that's fine. It's just what you just need to do is explain what is your responsibility. So, okay, put your marketing hat on and this time. Are we using our voice as our hospital the right way? Are we sharing it in the right channels? Are we from a marketing perspective? And then communications, same thing. And that's especially true for internal communications.
Mhm. And just to piggyback on that point, these are roles, these are not people. So you can have people playing multiple roles.
Yes.
On the flip side of Rebecca, when I worked in an academic medical center, I was everything. I was the messaging lead, content lead, marketing voice, communications, and PR. So I don't advise that, but you can have one person doing, more than one of these roles.
Yes, that is a really good point. And then the IT voice, that would be the chief technology officer, basically, because they have to be aware of, do you need any special enhancements, any updates, any changes based on the messaging? Is there a special form that you need to fill out? So he or she needs to be there to be able to say, oh, I understand what you need. I approve this. I'm going to give my team, my tactical team, the resources and the information they need to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see
Yep.
here on this last column with that person, just like what Kadisha was saying, is this messaging, how you fill it out, how the roles is based on your team, but then you fill out who's that person. So put their actual names on there so they know, oh, okay, I'm going to have to be the marketing, communications, and PR voice. Got it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wear those hats when I'm in these strategic meetings.
And also, I would add name and contact information. We're not coming in the office, so we got to know how to get a hold of people.
Yeah.
So if there is cell phone, email address that's current for them, put that on here as well.
Yeah, and that's key. We'll talk about really great point, because what's going to happen if you are not in the same room by chance?
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on then quickly to the tactical team. So this is the team who's getting it done, who's getting the orders from the strategy team. So that content lead, content director, whatever the title is coming and saying, okay, content producers, here's what we need. So we have content, and it could be more than one. You're writing content based on the direction of the strategy team. And you'll see here what we did, and it's not blank, but it's saying this could be the same person as the person who's the poster or the distributor of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand you may be a small team that's doing everything. And like what Kadisha always says, she likes having the content producer post the content,
I do.
like especially on a website. Yeah, do you want to explain why you like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you happen to be fortunate enough to have content producers in-house who give them access to the back end of your content management system so that they can post the content that they have created. The reason I like that is because it eliminates so much back and forth in the editing process. If that content producer posts something and it needs to be changed, they know exactly how to go in and change it because they created the first draft. It makes the workflow so much easier. I have seen it get bogged down when the person who has created the draft of the content and passes it on to somebody else to review. When it's time for feedback or something to change, now you have to hunt down the content producer again, ask them to make the change, send it back to the content poster so that they can post. And it's a lot of extra steps in the middle, which we don't have time for because we're all at home. And like I said, we have these kids who are not in school and we need to make our process as streamlined as possible. So I'm a big fan of the person who produces the content to actually be the person who is posting it. I also just want to make a quick point about why we call them content producers. So often we call them content writers. These people might be doing podcasts. These people might be doing videos. They might be graphic designers who are doing infographics. So content producer is kind of all encompassing of the various formats that you might be distributing. And anybody, again, who, if they're in-house, need to be able to post their own content. The only exception I would make to this rule is if you are relying on freelancers. Obviously, you may not feel comfortable giving them access to the back end of your content management system to post the content, but they are producing it for you. That's the time when I would say that's probably not a good idea unless you really, really trust them. But if you have in-house content producers, they should also be tasked with posting and distributing the content.
Right. And again, we're just focusing on one thing, trying to make this as short as possible for you for this moment. But this is everything that we're saying is a perfect reason why you need an overall content strategy for your digital content, for not only website, for your social media, so that what if you were out as a content manager or content director and somebody needed to take over, you have to have that documented content strategy so someone could just pick it up and roll with it. So we'll talk about that on another webinar. But yeah, okay. So the content contributors part right here. So this is where, remember I said that medical voice will say, here are the providers that you can talk to. So it could be an infection prevention person, it could be a nurse, it could be a physician, it could be, physician assistant. So whatever the crisis is at that moment, so here's the list of people, here's their contact information, and then they would know too. So they could, because your hospital may have strict don't talk to anybody about anything, but if they know that they are a point person, then they'll be really willing to talk. And then that just makes, again, the reason we're doing this is because now you're figuring out the how, so you can just focus on the what.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Another thing about content contributors is, like Rebecca said, these need to be go-tos. These need to be people who have been teed up, knowing that they're going to be getting tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, we need your insight on this. Be very creative about how you glean that insight from them. They are extremely busy, especially if they're a frontline worker. You may not be able to set up a call or an interview with them, but there are other ways you can still get their insight and get their voice to include in the content. One of the things that we often do is we will send the questions either via text message or email, and we'll ask them to respond by sending a recording. Meaning you can go on your iPhone, you can click the voice record app, and they can record their answers to the questions and email it right to you from their phone. They can do it at 2 a.m. They can do it at 2 p.m. at their convenience, and you'll get a quicker turnaround if you're not relying on them to contribute by setting up a call or doing something that consumes their time.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one here is content reviewers. And this one, again, this is a dream, right? If you have a lot of people, what we do at Care Content is we have a content producer and that who writes, if it's writing, so thinking about writing, then she gives it to our content director who proofs and edits. So before we give it off to the client. So thinking about this, everything's so fast paced. Your content producers are writing like crazy. Maybe they wrote something wrong, poor grammar, or had two thes in a sentence or something. Just have someone else look at it quickly before you send it off to the content approvers, which is the next line here, who would be that medical voice, legal voice, messaging lead voice, where it's saying, okay, this is good from a medical voice. Yes, the medical information you're sharing is right. Legal is, yeah, it matches our legal, and do those last two. And then the overall, this leader, the sponsor, whoever that person is, would say, yeah, this is exactly what we wanted, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
another thing about the content reviewer is that this can be the same as your content lead. So your content director can also be that sort of first or second edit on any of the content. The reason I'm a fan of that is because they've been in all the strategic meetings. So they know sort of what the top-down approach is, and they can catch that when they're doing any kind of editing or proofing on the first draft or first cut of the content you're distributing.
Right, because the next step will show us the process. Because that process is in place, then that content director should have the time to do that, because everything is hopefully in order. Again, best case scenario. We're trying to put chaos, make it perfect, and we know that's not the case all the time.
Yeah.
The content poster distributor, again, that's posting the message throughout the content ecosystem. So we already talked a little bit about that. And then the content developer, of the actual person who's making the updates on that. Hey, I need a form. Can you do this?
Yep.
So,
yep.
Right.
Another thing about the content poster, just to say this person should know your content ecosystem, and particularly your flagship property, which is probably your website. They should know it inside out. So if let's say a video is created by a content producer, it's ready to go live, they should be able to identify the various pages on the site where this video makes sense, not just the one page or just the home page. They should say, oh, we have a page that, we have a service page that this could go on. We have a few physician bios that this video should be posted on, or that you can at least link to. They should know how to place this content so that it gets found in more than one spot.
I think that's a really good point, Kadisha, because right now you're in the crisis mode. Everyone like, just put it up there. It's important to get things up there fast, but there's still a little bit. If you pause just 2 minutes and say, should this video go on the top of the page or the bottom of the page? Does it make sense? Am I putting it on the right page? That's a really key important. That everyone needs to be a little bit of a content strategist at this point. And
yeah, Such a good point.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's good. And we'll talk a little bit more when we get to step 3.
Hmm.
So let's go to step 2. So develop a content production process. So again, what I have here is I tried to really pare it down for here's what needs to be done. Because again, it may look like 6 steps to get through to create something. But we need to get this up here fast. But it goes by pretty fast. When I do process maps, I like to be a little detailed here. I'm actually a little bit more detailed than what I have posted here, because
Yeah.
I'd like everybody knows exactly what needs to be done. Because if we see it on the sheet of paper, you have that checklist of, okay, I did this, I did that, I did that. So again, it's that what needs to be done, so you can focus on, how to get it done. You can focus on the what. So
Hmm.
starting at 1 is big. Okay, the strategic team meets and they say, here's the messages we want to say. So the content lead says, great, I'm going to create this content calendar of topics and potential posting dates and assign it to the content producers. Have a meeting with the content producers and say, okay, here's what you got to do. The content producers I know who my interview people are, because we've already identified the contributors. I'm going to go reach out to them. I have my marching orders. I know what the voice is. I know what the tone is. I know what the purpose of our message is. And then they're going to produce that content. They'll send that content to the reviewer or proofreader for editing. And then if you go to step 4, the content reviewer will proof immediately as possible. If there's edits, they'll send it back to the content producer, and then they'll send it back just say, okay, just look at one more time. Is that good? You could at that
Hmm.
point sometimes too be like, hey, the proofer could say, hey, just make this one change and then send it off.
Yep.
So make the producers and the reviewers become best friends.
Yep. One other thing here, just about this point, put a cap on the amount of passes people can have at reviewing the content.
Yes.
Let them know up front, you get 1 pass at this, or you get 2 passes at this, and that's it. You don't want people to think they have the liberty to go back and forth, because we just don't have time. So
Yeah.
let them know when you first send them the content, we need your best and final edit on this.
That is right. And again, that goes back to the content strategy. If you have those content guidelines in place, then you empower your content producer to say, this is the way to do it. And the reviewer say they know what to review. And so, all right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say they say, okay, great, these look great. Then the content producer says, okay, I'm going to send these to the strategic team for those voices to look at it. If they say, I need a couple edits because something's changed, then they would revise, send it back to the content producer for approval. And let me move this here real fast. And then
Mm-hmm.
if they do approve, then they say, great, then the content distributor would either post it themselves or send it to the distributers, the poster and
Mm-hmm.
distributors. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, it is a pretty simple step from getting from the top down, top to you, back to them, and back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So the key to all of this, though, is let me get down here. Step 3: communicate,
Yep.
communicate, communicate. So there's the different things that you need to communicate. First of all, you just spent the weekend, couple hours. It shouldn't take you that long to say, here's the roles, here's the responsibilities, here's the people who do it, and then sharing that with them. Because if they don't know it, if they don't know what the process is, this is where everyone needs to be on the same page. It sets their expectations for each of the players involved. They know what their roles are, what they're supposed to do. So it won't be, well, I thought you were doing it. Oh, I thought you were doing it. So this is what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then another communication is this coming from the content lead, content director, the content strategist, whatever your title is, of setting up the regular meetings. So you set it up with the strategic team, the tactical team, when you need to have it. So here's an example. When I was a content manager at my hospital, and we were doing this major website migration, and everyone said, oh, this could tear your team apart. This is going to be awful. Well, they said when we did it, because we met every day at 3:00, what's the problem you're having? How far are you? What do you need from me? what are the challenges you're facing? What do I need as a strategic team so they can help facilitate to get what you need to get your job done, to get this information out to our audience. So it's that, and so when we had those meetings, it was great because everyone felt like you're listening to me. My challenges are being heard, and we're fixing them. We're fixing the challenges. And then the third thing, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with that contact information, is say, okay, everyone, what's the communication tool that we're going to use? Is it email? Is it text? Is it Slack? Is it Drive? Is it Zoom, which is what we're using today for this webinar? This is a case where we couldn't be in the same room to do our normal webinar with a nice camera. This is what we had to do in place of it. So you figure, you think about those specific tools. I'm sure there's probably, 20 other things that you could use. Is it your internal, is it like SharePoint, or is it phone? So you just have to work with the team to figure out what it is, and then say, this is how we're doing it, and sticking with it. So one thing we just want to let everyone know, first of all, thank you for everything that you've been doing to develop content to share with the community about COVID-19. We understand what we're going through. We appreciate it. We're looking at it for our clients and even for our own families. And we want you to know that you've got this, it won't last forever. It won't. And what we've done for you too is you can go to our website and you can download on carecontent.com, download the worksheet with the governance outlining of who the tactical team is and the strategic team.
Feel free to contact me. You can also contact me through the website, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, everyone.